You are Locked On Broncos, your daily podcast on the Denver Broncos, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Welcome to Victory Monday here on Locked On Broncos. Tonight's edition of the show is brought to you by mybookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid. Use the promo code LOCKEDON to lock in your bet or your wage over at mybookie.ag. And what a Victory Monday we have for you here on Locked On Broncos. Obviously, last night the Denver Broncos played the Dallas Cowboys and came out on top in a game that was America's Game of the Week. On Fox, you had Joe Buck, you had Troy Aikman on the call, and you had the Denver Broncos versus America's supposed team, the Dallas Cowboys. Well, I think a statement was made, and obviously yesterday's win, 42-17 over the Dallas Cowboys. The Denver Broncos came out victorious, and they never hesitated. From the very beginning, they capitalized, they forced a 3-and-out, and the Denver Broncos offense drove down the field. Trevor Siemian threw for 3 touchdowns in the first half, finished with 4 on the game. We'll break all that down in just a moment, but the Denver Broncos overall start off the season 2-0. Obviously with a big game coming up this Sunday on the road in Buffalo, Eastern Time. You got an early game about 10:05 Pacific Time, 11:05 Mountain Time. You can catch the game over on CBS, and hopefully Tony Romo is the guy who's drawing the assignment for the Denver Broncos. I'm eager to see what game Romo will be calling, but it's Victory Monday, like I said, and it's a good feeling. And you know what? I feel very optimistic about a lot of things regarding the Denver Broncos. Let me tell you why. Last year, when we watched the Denver Broncos, heck, even 2 years ago, when we watched the Denver Broncos play football, there was always something that was missing about them that we were like, something is missing that makes this team complete. Well, a lot of it, I think, has to do with, improved play calling. Mike McCoy has proven in just 2 weeks to be a highly sought investment, improvement, whatever you want to call it, over Gary Kubiak and his play calling over the last 2 years. Mike McCoy has revamped the Denver Broncos offense, and they are looking better than ever. And the reason why, in my opinion, is there's a little more solidarity across the board. You know what? There are obviously some question marks on the offensive line still. Obviously, Garret Bolles went down. We'll cover that in just a moment, unfortunately. Malik Watson has been being eaten up alive by opposing pass rushers. We'll talk about that in just a second. But the Denver Broncos, despite some of those question marks or some of those areas of concern, overall, they have improved on a lot of things in which they haven't been good at for the last couple of years. And specifically, the Denver Broncos have a flow, have a consistency to them on the offensive side of the ball, in passing the ball, running the ball. The passing game is there. The running game is there. There is a little bit more pressure that I believe has been taken off the Denver Broncos' shoulders. Obviously, specifically the defense. The defense doesn't have to be on the field as much just through 2 weeks, rather than what we witnessed last year, 2 years ago, when the Denver Broncos opened up the season against the Baltimore Ravens, Gary Kubiak's head coaching debut again for the Denver Broncos. The thing that stood out to me with that was that the Denver Broncos offense looked absolutely terrible and they struggled, and then all of a sudden that's where the no-fly zone evolved. The Denver Broncos defense with Aqib Talib and them, they evolved, and then you have the game last season against the Carolina Panthers, and the offense once again looked like it sputtered and couldn't get anything going. And you had the Denver Broncos defense playing dominant again. Well, this year has been different. Obviously, the Denver Broncos defense was playing phenomenal last week. The Denver Broncos offense was playing phenomenal last week. But today showed something to me against a very, very good Dallas Cowboys team, an NFC contender in my honest opinion. They had some injuries on the defensive backfield, but their offensive weapons were still there, and Ezekiel Elliott played this game. Not a lot of people were sure if Ezekiel Elliott was going to play or not. You had Dak Prescott, you had Jason Witten, you had Dez Bryant, Cole Beasley, Terrence Williams, and you also had Ryan Switzer. You had some weapons. The Dallas Cowboys offense, who arguably, and I said it in the pregame show last week, that they had one of the most feared, I wouldn't say most feared, I'd say one of the most notarized offensive lines in the National Football League. They were one of the top O-lines over the last several years. They've provided great protection. They've solidified the run game. They've stamped the run game. And we just didn't see that, yesterday against the Denver Broncos defense. They couldn't get anything going against the Denver Broncos. Now, the Denver Broncos, obviously I thought Joe Woods came out with a very aggressive game plan, which I thought boded well for the Denver Broncos, and it kind of allowed the Broncos to smack the Cowboys in the mouth from the very beginning. They went on to force a 3-and-out on the first series, and then Trevor Siemian drove the Broncos down the field where he connected with Emmanuel Sanders for a touchdown, draped over 3 defenders where the kids can't get it, and that was a great start for the Denver Broncos. I think ideally, just me being a defensive-minded guy as a football coach and as a football enthusiast, I like being on defense first. That way, if the offense, if they don't start off on the right foot, you have the opportunity as a defense to start out on the field first and set the momentum for the game, set the tone for how the game's going to go. And I think the Denver Broncos defense did just that for the Broncos offense. And ultimately, it helped them control the momentum of the game for a good majority of the rest of the game, minus the weather lightning delay that the Broncos had, that they were off the field for about an hour and 2 minutes. But overall, the Denver Broncos were very productive, and here's why. Trevor Siemian threw for 231 yards, 4 touchdowns, threw 1 pick, and the Denver Broncos rushed for over 178 yards while controlling the time of possession for about 33 minutes and 50 seconds. That's pretty good. Now, the Denver Broncos really kind of struggled, obviously, late in the game. Obviously, I feel like with the second half, we've seen this before with turnovers that lead to momentum, and there was a pick that Trevor Siemian threw on a route to Demaryius Thomas where it looked like he was either too high or Demaryius Thomas slipped, but the Broncos lost 2 turnovers. I think the thing that kept the Denver Broncos consistent all day was the fact that they completed 60% of their third down attempts, and Trevor Siemian looks absolutely phenomenal. Like I said, he completed 22 of 32 passes for 231 yards and 4 touchdowns. The offensive production for Trevor Siemian was there, and it's an exciting thing for the Denver Broncos going forward. So before we get to the next part, I would like to take several moments just to tell you guys about something that I've become really passionate about with how I play sports. And at the beginning of the show, I mentioned that this episode was brought to you by mybookie.ag. Well, let me tell you a little bit about them. A lot of people always ask me who I'm voting for this week in the big games, who I'm betting on, who I've got my money on. Well, half the time when I put my money up, they never come through with the money. Well, mybookie.ag is completely different. Let me tell you about them. Where you're betting at is almost just as important as who you're betting on. So that's why I always tell people to go to mybookie.ag. If you go there right now and use promo code LOCKEDON, you will receive up to a 100% deposit bonus just for signing up. With the world of fantasy sports, there are a lot of online sports books out there, but mybookie.ag is the only one that gets my stamp of approval. And I wouldn't recommend it to you if it wasn't something that worked for me. Mybookie.ag is by far the best sports book that I've used. It's been in the business for years, and their reputation is absolutely rock solid, and they do 100% cash bonuses. So off the bat, you're making money for almost doing nothing, and they have the fastest payouts out there. No more waiting a week just to receive your FanDuel or DraftKings deposit. It takes just about 48 hours for mybookie.ag to send you the money that you win. It's no different from betting in a glitzy Las Vegas casino, but you can do it right from your smartphone, wherever you're at. Trust me, go to mybookie.ag to place your bets and tell them I sent you over there by using promo code LOCKEDON. Get over there, get the best odds, and win now. So let's break down the Broncos' 42-17 victory by looking at the stats, obviously, for the Denver Broncos and the Dallas Cowboys in the passing, rushing, receiving, and defensive departments. Like I said it before, Trevor Siemian completed 22 of 32 passes for 231 yards and 4 touchdowns. He had 3 touchdowns in the first half. Could have had 4 in the first half. He missed Demaryius Thomas. He threw it to Benny Fowler. It was incomplete, and some people on Facebook groups out there supporting the Denver Broncos erupted and were mad at Trevor Siemian because he missed a wide open target, didn't see him. Like I said, it happens. It absolutely happens. If you were right now sitting at home and you're complaining about how Trevor Siemian is playing, you should turn off your TV for a week, get outside and go do something and support your quarterback. That's the number one thing that really bothers me about social media is Trevor Siemian, despite how well he is playing, is under a tremendous microscope by fans, and they act like that Paxton Lynch would come in right now and do better. Now, I'm not going to get fired up about this, but Trevor Siemian is playing his tail off, and he's played very impressive. Also, who have played impressive today, obviously, was C.J. Anderson. He had 25 carries, 118 yards, and had a 28-yard touchdown run late in the game that really kind of solidified the dominance that the Denver Broncos brought to them, and this was after Garret Bolles went out with what we assumed to be a high ankle sprain. He's going to have an MRI just to be sure. The X-ray came back. You really couldn't tell anything from it because there is a lot of swelling. So hopefully it's just a high ankle sprain like it was with Derek Wolfe in training camp. That way he can get back here maybe in a month or, 3 to 4 weeks. Obviously the Denver Broncos do have a bye week coming up here in several weeks as well. So that could bode well for the Denver Broncos if they can come out and win some games and improve the tackle play. Right now, obviously with Garret Bolles out, you have Menelik Watson, Donald Stevenson, maybe even Alan Barber out of tackle may help the Denver Broncos, but we'll see. CJ Anderson, 25 carries, $118, 1 touchdown. Jamal Charles came in, ran the ball, had 9 carries, 46 yards, and also had a couple catches out of the backfield, which really helped extend the Denver Broncos' drives. CJ Anderson had a receiving touchdown from Trevor Siemian early in the game as well. CJ Anderson proved to be a dynamic threat, an all-purpose back today. Well over 130 yards of all-purpose yards total. CJ Anderson was very productive and he's healthy, and this is the Denver Broncos team that we wanted to see with CJ Anderson healthy last year. But obviously, when CJ Anderson went out with that injury after San Diego, the home game last year, the Denver Broncos offense sputtered. But now under Mike McCoy, they are revamped and they are looking dang good, baby. In the receiving department, we obviously had Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, both catching 6 passes. Demaryius Thomas, 6 catches, 71 yards, and obviously Emmanuel Sanders, 6 catches, 62 yards, and 2 touchdown snags for the Denver Broncos. They played pretty well. CJ Anderson had 3 catches for 36 yards and obviously a 16-yard touchdown catch from Trevor Siemian. Cody Latimer came in and had 2 catches for 22 yards. Jeff Hireman had a big 15-yard reception before he went out of the game with a shoulder injury. And then Virgil Green had 2 catches for 11 yards and a touchdown catch late in the game for the Denver Broncos. And then Benny Fowler went out of the game actually with a concussion after what looked like it could have been an athletic touchdown on it was a Trevor Siemian. He faked the screen pass and he threw it. Fowler came down with the ball. Knee landed in bounds, but it wasn't quite definitive. He immediately hit his head on the way down. He got up and he started running. He dropped. It was kind of scary, honestly. So he was out for the rest of the game with concussion, and hopefully he gets better. If he's not active in this next week game against the Buffalo Bills, we could see Jordan Taylor activated to the active roster, in light the fact that Benny Fowler may have to sit this next one out. Now, the Broncos defense absolutely swarmed the ball today, and I'll tell you why. When we look at the Denver Broncos, obviously, they came into this game with 5 defensive linemen. Okay, Brandon Marshall had a heck of a game. The Denver Broncos went more of a nickel package today than they did their solid base package. And we didn't really see much of, if any, of Todd Davis today. I don't even think we saw Todd Davis out there once today. The Denver Broncos went completely with their nickel package with, Justin Simmons and Will Parks in at safety in the nickel spots. Brandon Marshall had 7 tackles as well as Shaquille Barrett. Justin Simmons had 6 tackles, cleaned up. Chris Harris had 6 tackles, 2 pass deflections, covered a lot of, Dez Bryant, Cole Beasley, and even Terrence Williams sometimes, but Chris Harris Jr. saw a matchup mainly on the inside slot guys where right there he was a little better of a service for them with, the speedy Cole Beasley across the middle where they try to interlock different crossing patterns as well. Bradley Roby played phenomenal today, in my opinion, on Dez Bryant, and he locked him up a little bit. He had 2 tackles. He had a huge pass breakup in the fourth quarter on a goal line fade to Dez Bryant. Broke it up, and obviously Aqib Talib should have had 3 interceptions today. He had 3 pass deflections, and obviously a 103-yard pick six late in the game on 4th down when Dak Prescott went to go throw it to Dez Bryant. Aqib Talib jumps in front of it, picks it off, runs 103 yards, and Victory Monday today seems so much sweeter because of it. So Aqib Talib, with that, moves past Deion Sanders for most career pick sixes in his career. That's pretty special, and I think Aqib Talib certainly does have a future in the Hall of Fame for what he's done as a player. And if you don't know, it's hard enough in the NFL to get interceptions. To get over 10 pick sixes in your career is pretty special. Von Miller had 2 sacks today against Dak Prescott that came in the fourth quarter. He was very aggressive. He had several offside penalties, but his quick release obviously was there. There were several calls. Obviously, they had a roughing the passer call on Von Miller that I didn't necessarily agree with. I was quite frustrated by it, honestly. Overall, Von Miller absolutely scared the tackles for the Dallas Cowboys today, and he got his 2 sacks. So he's currently on pace. Right now, he's two sacks off of his pace of 30 for what he said he can get 30 sacks this season. So he's got pretty much 28 more sacks to go, and guess what? He's there for a season goal. So Von Miller played absolutely huge. I thought Joe Woods did a very good job at, not being vanilla on defense. He gave them different looks with the nickels. He blitzed guys, and he showed a lot of blitzing from the inside backers, and they drop into pass coverage, and they'd get out there. So that was very effective in terms of Joe Woods. So early on with Joe Woods, I'm absolutely impressed. I think the Broncos and Bradley Roby, Darian Stewart, I thought they responded pretty well to giving up some broken assignments last week against the Los Angeles Chargers on Monday Night Football. The pass defense was absolutely phenomenal today, and I look forward to it even more. You had a guy like Bradley Roby, you had Aqib Talib, you had Chris Harris Jr., and you had these young guys in Will Parks and Justin Simmons where you look at, there was a play where Justin Simmons gave up a touchdown to Jason Witten, but you look at the upside that these two young safeties have and why the Denver Broncos are so fond of them is they come in, they do a pretty good job in coverage, they help in run support. Justin Simmons gave up that one touchdown, like I said, but overall he really responded, I think, after that more so, but he played phenomenal in cleaning up. Obviously, the run games, if there was an extended run play, he had a huge stop on 3rd and 3. I believe it ended up being a 4th and 3 after Dak Prescott turned to run, but Justin Simmons came up, made the tackle, made the stop. But the run defense was absolutely smothering. Domotah Peko, Kasim Edebali, Corey Nelson, Derek Wall, Von Miller, Shaquille Barrett, Brandon Marshall, Adam Gotsis, Justin Simmons, they all played a major role in stopping the Dallas Cowboys, offense today and the run game. And to just put into perspective what the run game really detailed for the Dallas Cowboys, Ezekiel Elliott had 9 carries for 8 yards. That's averaging 0.9 yards per carry. And then you had Dak Prescott, who scrambled a couple times. He had 3 carries for 24 yards. He had 11-yard scramble. Other than that, the Denver Broncos defense shut down the Dallas Cowboys' punted offense. And we talked about it in the pregame preview last week when we were covering the Dallas Cowboys coming to town. The Dallas Cowboys offense in week 1 against the New York Giants looked absolutely phenomenal. They looked kind of scary, to be honest with you, and the defense looked scary. This week we saw a completely different Dallas Cowboys team, and because of that, I honestly made a bet with one of my football players that I coach. He told me that the loser has to buy the winners a medium thing of wings from Buffalo Wild Wings. So once again, I'm winning. I enjoyed it. That's another reason why I'm glad the Broncos won. But overall, I'm very impressed with how the Broncos played overall today, and I'm eager to hear your thoughts as well. So be sure to tweet the show at Cody Roark NFL and at Locked On Broncos. So now I announced it. We have the contest coming up where you, the listener, have a chance to be on Locked On Broncos, do an interview, be on the show with me on an upcoming episode in the next week or two. Here are your 3 trivia questions. Your first question is, when the Denver Broncos last played the Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving back in 2005, which running back had a 55-yard scamper on one of the first plays of overtime and the overtime victory over them? Your second trivia question is, which former Denver Bronco forced the pressure on Tom Brady in the AFC divisional game in 2005, where Champ Bailey intercepted the ball and returned it 99 yards before getting knocked out of bounds by Benjamin Watson? Which Broncos player forced the pressure to make Tom Brady throw the pick? And finally, which former Denver Broncos player was drafted in 2008 out of Kent State? He played for the Denver Broncos for a couple years before tearing his ACL. He was a tremendous player, also a good friend of mine, a mentor of mine as a defensive back. Who is this player that the Denver Broncos drafted in the 2008 NFL Draft? So there you have it. Those are your 3 trivia questions, and the first person to tweet me at Cody Roark NFL or at Locked On Broncos the correct answers first to those trivia questions, you get to join me for an episode of Locked On Broncos here on the Locked On Podcast Network. In the meantime, if you haven't yet subscribed to Locked On Broncos, head over to iTunes right now, go over to the review section, leave a review, and in the comment also leave your Twitter handle to be eligible for a chance to win a free Pro Football Focus Edge subscription. It's usually $39.99 a month, where you get to win it for free by just leaving a review of Locked On Broncos, and tell us why Locked On Broncos is your favorite Broncos podcast that keeps you up to date with all the latest news, analysis, and game coverage of everything Denver Broncos. Forgot to mention this at the top of the show, but LockedOnBroncos.com is now officially up. If you missed the podcast on iTunes, or if you don't have an Apple iPhone, you can go to LockedOnBroncos.com LockedOnBroncos.com, and you'll have access to every episode of Locked On Broncos, as well as the latest news articles and blogs that I write covering the Denver Broncos over there at LockedOnBroncos.com. The Denver Broncos, like I said, Victory Monday, victorious yesterday over the Dallas Cowboys, 42-17. Huge win, 2-0 on the season. I'm very excited. Next up, we got the Buffalo Bills. So look forward to, hopefully, we can join Locked On Bills this week to talk about the matchup going forward. They're obviously coming off a tough loss against the Carolina Panthers. They had a potential touchdown catch on 4th and 11 late in the game, and it was dropped. So maybe they're a little upset going forward. But the Denver Broncos, riding high on momentum, have an opportunity to start 3-0 on the season. Have to take advantage, have to make sure the injuries are not a big factor with Garret Bolles, who's out with probably an ankle sprain. He probably won't play this game, but we'll cover the injury report before the Denver Broncos kick off against the Buffalo Bills as well. And you'll also be able to catch us on the halftime show on Sundays and the postgame report at the Locked On Broncos Twitter handle, at Locked On Broncos. Your fan engagement and feedback during the post game and obviously the halftime shows of Periscope has been a huge thing, so we're going to start utilizing that more. I may do a Thursday episode strictly on Periscope over at Locked On Broncos, as well as we're trying to take over, have that TV show type element on Thursdays on the Locked On Podcast Network. So with that, tonight's episode is brought to you by mybookie.ag. Head on over there right now and receive up to a 100% cash bonus just by depositing and signing up for your first time. Use promo code LOCKEDON to activate the offer. So visit mybookie.ag, promo code LOCKEDON. You play, you win, you get paid. This is your host, Cody Roark, saying good night and go Broncos.